What is up, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. We got a lot to get into today. We're going to talk about receiver depth chart. We're going to talk about, is 8 or 9 wins a disappointment for this season for Luke Fickell and a new look Badgers coaching staff. We're going to talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Badgers. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. We're just going to bring in everybody today. We're going to do it right away. We got Rasheev, we got Justin, and we wanted to just kind of get to some of the comments that have been backing up. Again, we always try to make these community shows because really we're smarter because people make comments, because people initiate discussion. So let's just get into it. We have a bunch of banners we want to get into. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And gentlemen, let's just get into some comments. Let me start here. How are you guys doing today?
Well, apparently you're doing exceptionally well, given that the Suns just beat the Denver Nuggets to tie the series back up at 2-2. So I felt like I needed to trigger you and give you that opportunity.
I'm stoked. I'm not going to lie.
That's a good reason to be stoked. And the Suns finally won me some money. I've been placing bets on the Suns, and it was been horrible. But thank you to Phoenix. No, I'm good. It's exciting, good to be back on. And my English Premier League team won this weekend, so Tottenham had a victory, which is great to see.
Wrexham moving up a league.
Wrexham's definitely moving up in there. A few years they'll be up at the top. Yeah. But yeah, that's good.
Listen, I'm not going to lie. I sent a text to Rajiv and Justin. I said, if the Suns lose, I don't want to do a show tonight. I'm gonna be I'm just gonna be too miserable. So
as someone you've watched with the Wisconsin Badger games, you know how sour I get when things don't go right, and how like Ryan and Rajiv have heard the pure venom that spews out of me when we have a game that we lose and I'm angry after. Like, you guys get the watered down version of it. Yeah.
Yep. Fire everyone. You guys burn the program down. So let's get into it because most people aren't here to hear my son's musings. Although Dan Pazdernik says that was a great game. It was. Devin Booker is that dude.
This has low-key been a great playoffs in general.
It has. I agree. All right, but let's get into that Badger content because that's what most people are here for. I want to start off here because we've had a ton of discussions about this. I really want to kick it over to you because I've talked about this a lot in terms of expectations this year. Blake Nelson says, I am sorry. If we don't win 10 games this season, it's a disappointing year. Only challenges should be Ohio State and Iowa. Blake, first of all, thank you for the comment. I want to start with that last part. Are the only challenges for you guys really Ohio State and Iowa? Because I feel like that's optimistic, but that's just me.
They're the two biggest. Like, listen, there's a bunch of teams that we could stub our toes against if we don't come out ready to play. Wisconsin is going to be more talented than every team they play but Ohio State. And that's with what we added in terms of the transfer portal and everything else. We just have more. Our ceiling is higher than everybody else. Now, you can lose to anybody. And if the team doesn't have good chemistry and the offense doesn't click and things don't go right, we could lose more games. But I'm going to bet on the coaching staff because they have a record of success, especially looking at Longo. You know, he's consistently gotten huge numbers out of his quarterbacks, regardless of who has started for him.
Those are definitely not the only two challenging games. Purdue is something that I've mentioned before on the show, and that scares me because it's a road game. They've now got a new head coach that's going to be more defensive, and they've got a new transfer quarterback. So I'm always afraid of traveling. I mean, listen, when you travel on the road in the Big Ten, you're always going to run into situations that are difficult. I mean, I won't even say Minnesota is going to be a tough game because that should not be a challenge, and it better not be a challenge. But yeah, I mean, Washington State, obviously, we know that's going to be a little bit, that's a road game that's difficult. I think Purdue's going to be difficult, Iowa and Ohio State. Those are the ones that are tough. But as far as the first part of the sentence, 10 games, I don't think it's a disappointing season if we win 9, if we win 8. I said this before as well. One thing that we really need to focus on is the performance. What are we watching them? What are we seeing them do? I mean, it could be 9 wins can be disappointing if we play a certain way. 9 wins can be great if we play a certain way. I want to see progress, right? Because this is the start of something big. This is not the start of like a 1-year Luke Fickell wonder.
Yeah.
Unless Ryan Day, for some reason, goes bye-bye. We don't even want to talk about that. But This is a building of a program. So I want to see us improve. I want to see in-game coaching improve. Obviously, that was a huge issue for Chris. Recruiting's obviously already been doing well. I want to see the offense be more impactful. I want to, like all these things that we've been talking about, they need to improve. If we end up with 9 wins and we saw a successful team that did new things that they haven't done before, and we're seeing the program move in the right direction, not disappointing at all.
I want to see us consistently get 30 plus points on Big Ten teams with a pulse, which is something we have not done in a good bit of time.
Yeah, I think Rajiv's point is really dead on, and Justin, I agree with you as well in terms of scoring more consistently. But if we go out and we lose to Ohio State 59-7, right? If we have another one of those Ohio State games where it feels like we don't deserve to be on the field, that's very different than going and losing that game 34-28, right? Yeah. I think the progress is important, right? Competing in every big game, not getting blown out, never looking like you don't belong on the football field. Like, let's be honest, we've done that under Paul Chryst the last couple of years. We didn't look like we belonged with Illinois for parts of that game, for gosh sake. It's Illinois.
For most of that game.
Right?
Most of it, yeah.
It was embarrassing. I mean, we can look at some of those games. The Ohio State game, it felt like we were a JV team in a scrimmage. So
I don't even know if I'd say JV team.
Like what's below JV?
We were a directional team, like Eastern
Oh.
Illinois or something like that.
I don't think I would be disappointed with 9 wins. I really don't. But it is the manner of those 9 wins that matters.
I don't want to see us, have 3 and outs, 10 possessions in a row. It's not just about that. Like, I want to see action. I want to see real movement on the football field, moving the ball, 2-minute offenses, excitement, balanced offenses, throwing and running. Like, everything's got to look better. And then, yeah, I mean, if we're talking 9 wins in 3 or 4 years, oh gosh, then that's a problem. But I don't think that's going to happen. We can't put all of our eggs into the year 1 basket.
Yeah. For me, another low key thing, I want to see at least 2 300-yard passing games, which in a normal season, 1 would be the over under on that would be 0.1.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen. I can't remember the last 300-yard passing game. Can you? Do you know how long it's been?
Did Horny get one?
He probably did, which means it's probably been 4 years.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I don't think Cone did.
I was gonna say Cone might have had one. I mean, we had that overtime game in Purdue. It was double overtime. He might have got some yards in that one. I don't know.
By the way, really quick, how sad is it if you have to be we had a double overtime game, so make it
yeah, right.
Right? It's so sad.
That's how bad the passing game has been for so long.
Oh, it's been apathetic for sure. John Berger, by the way, I want to always say thank you for the people tuning in and said, been so busy, but haven't missed an episode in a year. John, you are the absolute friggin' man. Send me a DM and I will send you something amazing. I promise you. Thank you for supporting the show. Let's keep going to this. Jim Sansbury says, I still believe that they could and should win at least 9, and that would be a good year. I agree with that comment.
Yeah. I
think 9's a good year. I'm not going to be disappointed if they win 9 games as long as, back to Rajiv's point, they aren't absolutely embarrassed in some of those games.
Yeah. I think it comes down to whether you feel like what's good versus what their ceiling is. And I think that those are 2 different things. Because I think we think their ceiling is 11-1 or somewhere in that ballpark if everything clicks. But to say, that 9 wins would be a bad season, I don't agree with that, especially if we win our bowl game and go 10-3. For year 1, we'd all be happy with that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's get another comment up here. I wanted to talk about this one, get this into the comments as well. I think this is an interesting discussion. This is something that's been rattling around in my brain, so I made the comment. Which program, football or basketball, is more likely to win a national title? Let's say in the next 10 years, whatever. What is going to come first, basketball or football for the Badgers?
So for me, I understand the argument that basketball might be easier because technically one player can win you a national championship, i.e. like a Carmelo Anthony guy did. But I'm going to say football because of where the program is, because unlike other people on this show, even Ryan, I'm talking about you, believe that Wisconsin will win a football national championship in the next 10 years because of Luke Fickell, because I believe that we are a team that can be the next Clemson, that can rise up and actually go from a really good program to a really great program. And we've not been that far off many times. So from getting into the football playoff, now winning it is another story, but I think with Luke Fickell, you have that. So the momentum that's being built around the program right now, the recruits that we're expecting to see, the movement in the transfer portal, the change of culture, so on and so forth. Just insert, more and more things that have happened at the school since he came on. Yeah, I think he's the guy to do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think it's going to happen basketball. Well, I don't necessarily think it's going to happen right away. I believe in Greg Gard. We've said that. I want him to be here, but I don't necessarily believe that he has national championship integrity, like right there to like Luke Fickell does. Luke Fickell definitely has it, because if he took Cincinnati to the CFP, now come to a program like ours, and what can he build with the infrastructure that we have? So yeah, it's football all the way, in my opinion, because of him. If it wasn't for him, it would be basketball.
You want me to dive in on it? Because
I can go next if you want. I'll do it.
We'll sandwich this, because you know what my answer is already.
I'll take it. You be the closer. You come out of the bullpen in the ninth on this one. I think it's basketball. I like the momentum of Luke. If you had to tell me which coach I really buy into more, Luke Fickell or Greg Gard, Rashid, to your point, I 100% agree with you. You and I are like Legos on this. We stick together. It's Luke Fickell. However, it's so much easier in basketball as a non-blue blood just to land that one dude with a supporting cast. And we saw Greg Gard do that. We saw him land a lottery pick, right? Johnny Davis was a lottery pick. Like, he can do it. He's proven it. I think, to me, it's just so much easier in basketball. We've seen non-blue bloods in basketball make the run to the Sweet 16, to the Elite Eight, to the Final Four, right? We've seen that. We haven't seen that in football. And to me, Wisconsin football is still not a blue blood. You still have to have a roster of almost half 4- and 5-star guys. Statistically, that's what you need. Can Luke Fickell do that at Wisconsin? I don't know if anybody can at Wisconsin. So that's always been my holdup. I love Luke Fickell. I love everything you're saying. I still think it's basketball, because it's so much easier just to find a dude or two than it is to find 30 or 40 guys, which you need on the football roster.
With all due respect to Johnny Davis, that team was not remotely close to a national title team.
Do we know that because people got hurt? Maybe
dude, that rotation was 6 players. 6 players on that team. And you are looking at teams. We watched the teams that went to the Final Four this year. They went 7, 8, 9 deep with what they could throw out there. And when you start getting game after game on a weekend like that, where you're expending huge amounts of energy, the lack of depth will absolutely kill you. It happened to Wisconsin when we were in the national title game, when we had to play Duke, when that team ran out of gas in the second half. Mm-hmm. They were exhausted after going through the gauntlet, and Duke basically just moseyed in with the weakest, they had the weakest region out of anybody.
But they have been in the national title game, the basketball team.
Yeah, but that Greg Gard was not the head coach, and he was not the one that actually closed on those recruits.
I also think another point has to be made that, yes, when you have as big of a field as you have in basketball, anything can happen. Don't forget that the football field's about to get bigger. And while it's not massively bigger, when it goes from 4 to 12, like, we would have been in a lot of CFPs if it was 12. So you never know what can happen. And I know that Alabama and the SEC has been dominating, and good credit to them. They've won the games, but we have no idea what's going to happen when that field gets bigger. So there has to be that factored in as well.
I would say the other part about this, and it's to get back on the point that I was going to make with it, I do believe in Fickell in terms of him being able to recruit to that level. I don't think that he's going to recruit to a top 10 level, but I do think that he can get them pretty close to the break-even point on the 50% blue chip ratio. It's going to take a couple of years. People that think it's going to happen overnight, it's just not. He's got to prove it. Like, if Wisconsin comes out and goes 12-2 or 11-3 this year, yeah, that's going to do a ton for him recruiting wise to prove his point that I can do this at a Big Ten level and build a dominant team. Come play for me, because he's still got to prove it a little bit. And same with Longo at Wisconsin. He's got to prove that the offense is changing, because all these kids have grown up watching Wisconsin, where they have the most lethargic offense ever to watch. And it's just boring and dull to anybody that's not a running back. That's like, oh, you mean I get the ball 20 times a game? Which is fun for the first 3 games, and then you get beat up, the next 8. But I need to see Greg Gard prove that he can lock down that level of talent. he's got to prove to me he can get mid 4 stars, get 5-star guys that can come and play at Wisconsin. And it can't be one at a time. Like you and I have broken it down before, how many 4 stars Bo had on some of his rosters. We have one right now? I think is Chucky the only 4-star we have on the roster?
Don't you need Luke Fickell to prove that too, though, to some degree? And let me pause there. Because we have to take a quick break. But I don't think Luke Fickell has proven that he can get that level of talent yet either.
I mean, he's got a former 5-star wide receiver that walked in the door.
Maybe, but I'm just saying he has also not proven that he can get that level of
talent.
But
he's pulled talent that like at Cincinnati that we couldn't pull here, like at Cincinnati. So what can he do here?
But he hasn't pulled blue chip. I don't know. I think it's a question.
Well, I get what you're saying. There is something to prove there, but that's where I said we don't know right now with that aspect of it because he came in on a lame duck cycle. So you don't really get a feel for what he's actually going to do.
I'm not really so much doubting him as I'm saying we don't actually know if he can recruit to that elite level.
Fair.
There's a step up here where he's going from aiming for a top 25 class to trying to push for a top 15 class at Wisconsin.
But let's take a quick break. I have to take a quick break for our friends of the show. Then we're going to get back. We have a bunch of comments about this topic I want to dive into. Again, I think this topic itself is fascinating, right? Which program has an easier chance? I want to ask more questions about that coming up after the break. And also get into some other interesting questions we have. But first, we do have to take a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, one of the best places, frankly, in the world if you want to go to and have some fun with sports lines, sports betting. FanDuel has you covered in every aspect: baseball, basketball, football, NASCAR, racing, everything you could think of from a sports betting standpoint. FanDuel has you covered. And right now, the NBA playoffs are in full spec. Rajiv has talked about it. Make some money on the Suns. Rajiv is all on board with this Devin Booker. I should actually get him on the show before I say that. I'm talking out of turn, but I am all on board. I made money tonight on the Suns. Listen, if you see the smile on my face, if you're watching on YouTube, you know how stoked I am. FanDuel is your #1 source for all your sports betting needs and information. Right now, new customers can get that no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Again, I was on the Suns tonight. They won. I mean, I figured they would. They're at home. They need to even the series. That's what makes FanDuel so fun. Every single game you can get on a different line. Same game parlays. You can bet rebounds, assists, points, steals. Combine it to make it more exciting. Plus, simple payouts, quick payouts on the easiest to download sports app in the world. It is FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning into this show. Really do appreciate it. All the comments, y'all are incredible. Let's bring Rajiv and Justin back on. Gentlemen, I want to ask you this and finish up on this topic, and then I want to get into some of the comments from people. Is it a Greg Gard thing or a Wisconsin basketball thing for y'all? When you say Wisconsin football is more likely to win a national title, is it because you don't have faith in Greg Gard, or is it because you just think Wisconsin basketball can't get there?
I'll go first. It's Greg Gard, 100%. I think that basketball is, for a program, is all about who you get in. Any school, for the most part, can catch the perfect situation and put things down. And we kind of had it with Bo for a little bit. But I definitely think that we have a very we do things the right way kind of view when it comes to basketball recruiting, where it's like we don't want to play in an equal playing field. We want the moral high ground when it comes to how we view a lot of this. And it's stung Wisconsin. It has kept us out of situations where we may have got some players that we probably wouldn't have, or that we flat out didn't get, because with the way we were willing to do business. We've talked about it before. There are certain teams that they will go around the AAU team and just recruit the family directly. And that's just not going to work in the bigger scheme of things, when everyone else is kind of doing it the right way, and you have to put all these additional barriers to success in front of yourself when you don't need to. Like, there's enough things to hold Wisconsin back in that regard for basketball on its own right. Like, there are some academic things. I don't know if that's overblown or not to an extent, but I feel like we do not do ourselves justice when it comes to recruiting for basketball. And I don't feel like we pump out enough offers 100% with Greg Gard at the helm. Like, you have to, I'm not saying shotgun out offers to everybody, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't take chances and getting the best talent you can in the door.
Yeah, it's definitely because of Greg Gard, and it's not because I don't believe in Greg Gard. It's just that I believe in Fickell more. To me, Fickell has proven that he has championship quality based on what he did at Cincinnati. So I believe that. Did I believe in Bo Ryan more than Greg Gard? Absolutely, no doubt about that. And Greg Gard, I believe he's the right guy for the program right now. I believe that he can still hopefully do better, and he has to improve in recruiting. That's been talked about. So. But he can do that, and if he does, then maybe that elevates him a little bit. But I believe in Fickell way more, just because of what he's done and what he's done in the few months that he's been with us.
Can I ask a tough question, Rajiv? I feel like you and I are on the same page in terms of Greg Gard should not be in the hot seat.
Yep.
But you're also saying you don't believe necessarily in Greg Gard nearly as much as Luke Fickell. You think he's the reason Wisconsin basketball will not win a title before Luke Fickell. It feels like you're kind of on both sides of this fence. I'm absolutely not trying to put words.
Totally. It's fair. It's a fair point. And I'll tell you why. Because first of all, for me, and I've said this before, I think that success is measured a little bit differently in basketball for me than it is in football. So basketball, I want a team that can make the tournament every year. Can Greg Gard do that? Yes. I want a team that can win Big Ten championships. Can Greg Gard do that? Yes. I want a team that can advance to the Sweet 16 on somewhat of a regular basis, which he has not done, to be fair. And I want a team that, with the right players, with a guy like we had with Kaminsky and Decker, with those guys. I mean, Bo Ryan didn't make it there either until the very end of his time. So it's like when you have the right guys, can he make a run to the Final Four? Do I believe Greg Gard could do that? Yes, I believe he can. But if you're asking me who is going to win a title first, I'm going to say Luke Fickell. That doesn't mean that Greg Gard can't do it, but I have a stronger belief in Fickell because of what he did at Cincinnati. So, and success for me is different. Like I believe everything that I want out of the Wisconsin basketball program, which is consistent winning, Big Ten titles, and tournament advancement, I think Greg Gard can do.
I think it's fair. I think it's well said.
I think it's the Bucks fan in me from before Giannis was here that struggles with Greg Gard. And I think that a big part of it is this. Making the playoffs to me, or in this case, the tournament to me, is just kind of an apathetic goal in a way. It's like, if you don't do anything once you get there, does it really matter that you made it to the playoffs? So I kind of look at it like, if you have a coach that kind of keeps you at the 6, 7, or 8 seed every year, are you really accomplishing anything as a program? And it's a little different with basketball, obviously, in college. You can be 4th, 5th, 3rd in the conference, and it's a little bit similar to being like a 6, 7, or 8 seed in the NBA. Like you're not really challenging for anything, but you had a decent season. So to me, it's like, if you're not getting building a title contender, then you're wasting your time. You're spinning your wheels. Get somebody in there that's capable of that type of ceiling.
No, I think it's well said. I do think when we're talking about Greg Gard, we shouldn't dismiss the fact that he has won Big Ten titles. It's not always a 4th or 5th seed. No. I just think I hear what you're saying. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Justin, but I do think people tend to gloss over some of the accomplishments there. That's just my take. I think he has a higher ceiling than people give him credit for, but I think I'm more on an island than that than a lot of Badger fans, which is interesting to me.
I don't mean it as literal as that, by the way, with the regular season titles. I think the way I look at it, his teams, I've never had a Greg Gard team since he's been coach that I look at and say, this team makes me feel like we can win the title this year.
I think it's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's bang on some comments here. Noda Whale says easily football. A couple more keeps coming on here. Due North Badgers 715 again. I love the 715 from Cumberland myself. Football easily. So most people are football here. Mehmet Paku says Wisconsin will win a national championship under Fickell because of the recruiting he does. Dan Pazdernik, I apologize if I mispronounced last name. March Madness is just that. Madness, anything is possible, KG style. Again, I think I do really think that's where some of the randomness of March Madness bites Greg Gard. Like, you have 1 year where COVID wipes it out. You have 1 year where Johnny Davis is banged up and Chucky Hepburn is hurt, right? I'm not saying that those years would go differently if they didn't happen, if the injuries didn't happen and COVID didn't happen, but they certainly could have, and the whole narrative has changed. And I'll pause there if anyone wants to jump in.
I think there's something to be said for that, but I still think I look at those teams and that, like the Johnny Davis year, I love Johnny Davis and the way he played that season. It was a flawed team. It was a very thin team that had a lot of the same issues that this year's team had, and that it didn't really have, like, you were a little bit better off in the front court with Voigt, but you still didn't really have that guy that you wanted to be kind of a difference maker in the post defensively that could also give you some points. Like we didn't play Voigt enough to actually have him have that kind of impact. So there were places there where it's like we just don't have the depth to really truly contend when we get to the teams that can push us and push the tempo more and make us work for it. Like it reminded me a lot of some of Bo's earlier teams where we'd play like a North Carolina or whatever and hang around for 3/4 of a game and then lose by 9 and be like, we're just not as good as this team.
Bo Dragon says guard has no chance of making the Final Four. By default, it's football. Bo Dragon jumping in as always. I would say this, though. Listen, I would say this, and I don't want to belabor this point because I got a bunch more comments I want to come to, but I think we've all talked about this. We agree that if everybody's healthy, we beat Iowa State in the.
Oh, I don't doubt that. Yeah, I agree with that.
16 with a lottery pick, right? Once you get to that point with a lottery pick, aren't you kind of coin tossing every game? I don't know.
Anything can happen because when we were shooting well, like obviously we had a lot of games last year with Davis that he didn't shoot well, that we didn't shoot well, that we didn't score. We had scoring droughts per typical Wisconsin procedure. But there were games where we played really well too. I mean, he could drop 40 on Purdue, he can drop 40 in the Sweet 16, and all of a sudden we're in the Elite Eight, and now maybe we're going to overtime. Who knows, right? You just don't know. It is that comment was fair. Madness is madness, and that's just what happens, and you just don't know what's going to happen. So, yeah, like you got to have the talent. That's why I said you got to have the talent to be able to get there. And if everything kind of strikes properly, and you're shooting the ball well, you can make it to the Final Four. I believe he can still do that. There's nothing that says he can't, at least in my opinion.
I think it's a good point. That's kind of where I'm at. Let's get into more comments here. I want to talk about this. Jeff Olson brings up, would be nice if we get a cornerback in the portal with experience to bridge the gap. Is cornerback the biggest need in the football transfer portal for you guys? Or is it running back? Is it center? Is there another spot that's a bigger need than cornerback?
I don't think you're going to find a center that's worthwhile at this point going into it. Those guys are too valuable. Like a backup center from some other team, you have no idea what you're even getting, most likely. And you're not going to find a starter that's decided to move up at this point. I think corner, you can find somebody who maybe just decided, hey, I have a chance here to kind of cash in and make the jump. And I think there's a couple of those guys out there. Some of the guys that are coming out of Alabama and whatnot that have jumped. I mean, I think that guy went to Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. But you get guys like that who are depth pieces at a school like that and want their opportunity to prove themselves for draft stock. And that's exactly where Wisconsin can make a difference, because corners, you're playing 3 or 4 of them on the field at a time. They probably have some reps under them, and you have a chance to get a guy out there that you hopefully feel pretty good about, at least have a decent baseline of what to expect from him on the field. And I think that that's basically where we're at right now, is we want that third guy that gives us some baseline for the outside edges. I think we feel okay with Maitre and Laffey in the slot, but I don't feel great about the 2 outside guys. I love DeClona and Jace Arnold, but I just don't want to have them have to make a big play in a very tense situation and have to worry about them seeing something that they don't know how to react to.
I think this is a fair point. I kind of struggle and go back and forth a little bit between cornerback and D line, because I still think we could really use someone on the end, pass rushing, edge ability, some speed up there. I still don't quite know. I mean, I have a lot of belief in the defense, especially after what we saw in the spring game. I think there is a lot to go with there, but I still have a little bit of questions on the D line. But yeah, I mean, I believe in DeClona in our secondary a little bit more, and I do believe that Snowden is going to make an impact this year. So yes, if we got a corner in the portal, would I be upset? No. Great, go get one. Do I think it's an absolute need for us? I actually don't. I know that you guys do, but I feel like I'm okay with where we are right now. I'm really not that concerned about the secondary in general, cornerback or safety. I'm really not that concerned about it.
I'll tell you the biggest one right now. Punter.
Yeah.
That I'm scared to death on. I'm scared to death that we're going to have a 15-yard punt in a game where we need to flip the field and be like, oh my God, what just happened?
Or we drop a snap. I mean, everybody remembers Ohio State, with
the Rose Bowl against Oregon.
Anyway, I think corner's a huge need. I still think it's a big need just because of the depth. I don't want young players. To Justin's point, Rajiv, if you're correct that Amari Snowden steps in and makes an impact right away, you're correct. Then you don't need a corner.
Oh yeah, we could feel completely different about these guys 4 games in. Once they've got some reps under them, they could look great by that point.
I think it's tough for a guy who hasn't been in spring to jump in and make an impact right away.
I agree, and it's going to take some time, but yeah.
Let's get into this one. I think this is a good question here. And I already lost my where did this go? Oh, this one, Justin, this was kind of directed a little bit towards you, but towards all of us. Funny show. This is after our post-spring, post-launch show. Our starting quarterback throws 3 interceptions, 6 passes, and all is good. Justin, if Fickell did not want to put on a show for the fans, he would not have even had a spring game. Everything is roses for you guys. This is from David V. I forget the full name. I ran out of character space. But, Justin, I'm going to kick it to you. Are we a little too rosy on the fact that we're pumping everything up, essentially, is the point of the
first of all, I want to say that every spring game is a complete and utter waste of time if you're a fan base looking and expecting them to be going out there 4 wide and throwing it up for grabs and going high octane. That's just not what teams do. They go vanilla. They don't really show you much of anything. It's more or less just a publicity stunt for the most part. If anything, they're trying to get some reps through guys on probably some of their base regular sets. They're not going to show you much of anything that's really going to put kind of a few, wrinkles into things because they don't want to show that stuff. It wasn't a good practice. It flat out wasn't. He was not great in that. He made some bad decisions. He threw some bad balls. And honestly, it is what it is. But there's a difference between him doing that in week 2 against Washington State and doing it in a spring game where he's learning a new offense. I don't love it, but it's not what we've been hearing the entire spring based on how he's played. If that was what I was hearing from day one, that Mordecai looks like he was over pubbed and that he's not going to be the guy that he was at SMU, yeah, I would feel much differently about how to react towards him. But when I started hearing the press say, yeah, he looks hands down better than anyone we've seen since Russell Wilson coming in the spring, that tells me that I'll give him the benefit of the doubt for now. And I can tell you, I saw with my own eyes that Braden Locke is better than any backup we've had in the last, 25 years?
Mm-hmm.
Since
right. Yeah, I think I said that the stock was down, like as far as the quarterback stock was, I called that kind of down, and certainly it was concerning. But he was also, again, throwing in a practice against the aforementioned secondary that we have talked about. And we've got that defense returned a lot of people. I mean, you had experienced corners out there he was throwing against with Smith and Hallman, and Maitri looked good, and the defense looked good. They're together. There's not a lot of newness going on in that defense. Yes, Tressel's a new coach, but it's still a lot of the same stuff. And Tanner Mordecai's learning a new offense. So, yeah, agreed. If we see that against Buffalo, if we see that against Washington State, we are having a totally different discussion. But it's a spring game. Justin said it right. All the different reports coming out from their journalists, Jesse Temple, all these guys, it was very clear that he had a lot of great practices. Yeah, he had a couple bad ones, but he's facing a defense that sees them every day. They're very used to what's going on. They're learning his technique, and they're trying to get out there and make picks. Yes, I understand that maybe it's a little roses because of the nature of what Fickell's doing. And yes, we saw a bit of a hiccup, but it was a practice, and we'll see when Buffalo comes, right? That's when we'll really know what's going to happen with this team. But for now, I mean, I'm okay with it because yes, it's concerning, a little bit concerning, but nothing to really, just go crazy about because it's against our defense and it's a practice.
Yeah, and the point I made earlier, and I agree with you guys, by the way, Mehmet Paku says D-line is more of a need for the transfer portal because of numbers, by the way. I wanted to put that comment in there, just Rajiv, to your point. so much was going to be made out of the spring game, the launch, because of the hype, because of the energy, because people were there no matter what, right? We had talked about it. If Mordecai had come out and thrown 9 touchdowns, we would have been like the greatest offense ever. No
National championship.
Right. Like 7.
Well, then we'd be really worried about the defense.
Right? Like, no matter what, we were going to overreact to it. But at its core, it's one spring practice. For an offense putting in pieces, I'm just not that worried about it. Pete Herrings, by the way, if the last name sounds familiar, that is the father, says 9 wins would not be disappointment. I've lived through too many 2, 3, 4-win seasons. Perspective is important. I'm not that worried about it. Mehmet Pakuagan says Graham Mertz made those decisions during the season. Right. So we're in practice. We're not in the season. We're not in Buffalo. It's going to take a little bit of time. I'm not that worried about it. Gentlemen, we are at 35 minutes. Again, I just don't get to all the comments. I always underestimate the amount of people who tune into this, which I am incredibly appreciative of. Anything else that I'm going to kick it over to you guys. I talk a lot on these shows because I'm on here 5 days a week. Anything else that either of you want to kick out there before we cut this one short?
I'm going to throw this up here real quick. And Bo, one thing I'm going to say is, listen, I don't want to say that Evers is going to be a bust because I don't think he will, but he's got to get his head on right and play. But if you look at the plays that he had in that spring game, he wasn't great, but a lot of it wasn't his fault. The offensive line in front of him was absolutely terrible. And on one of the plays we watched where he was sacked, they literally gave up like it was a screen pass on it. There were 4 guys in the backfield the second he snapped the ball. So I don't make anything of the spring game from him at all, but he's got a lot of work to do to prove that he's ready to play next year. So hopefully he does the hard work and gets things going and takes this summer here to really, get this focus and starts pushing right away in fall camp for that second job against Locke.
I'll switch gears to basketball real quickly and say that, with Neath leaving, a scholarship has opened up. So it's interesting to find out what's going to happen in the transfer portal. There are definitely some guys out there. We've talked about big men, maybe a point guard. There's the guy at Penn, Jordan Dingle. He's still out there. A good scorer from a guard position. So yeah, I'm okay with it. I wish him well wherever he goes. And I think that the scholarship opening up could really, add yet another piece to the basketball program that should be much improved next year.
Yeah, that's well said. We didn't really talk about Jacoby Neath moving on. I mean, listen, he never got a chance with injuries, right?
Right. It's better. It's better this way, right? Like he can go do something else, and we can take the scholarship and apply it to a player that's going to, frankly, that's going to play more.
For sure. David, I see you said thanks, gents. Really appreciate you coming on. John Berger said, I have a name for the Justin show. Listen, we're still looking for a good name with Justin. We had a lot of this Justin with Justin, which is a great play on the name, but none of us here are really breaking through. So I don't think it works. So we're still looking for a great one on that. Really appreciate John, as always, tuning in. Paul Buckeye says, y'all don't need to worry about 9 wins. You'll be just fine. Listen, we're fans, bro. We're always going to worry. That's who we are. But I appreciate you tuning in again. Paul is a Buckeye fan that tunes into us a lot, which I really appreciate.
Look at that. John just put it up, by the way. John just put it up.
There we go.
Want to know what really matters? Listen to Justin on Locked On Badgers. That's one of his stats. Okay,
we'll chew on that one. I like that one. That's better than this Justin with Justin. Because we're just not breaking news, right? It doesn't work. With that, listen, really appreciate everybody tuning in as always. I can't tell you how much I appreciate Rasheed and Justin for coming in on the show. They're incredible. Some of the smartest people I ever. They're just awesome, quite frankly. So thank you for everyone tuning in on Wisconsin. We're going to talk to you tomorrow, and let's go.